All right, welcome back to another stream here on Free Will Photos. Today, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at a photo of a friendly little squirrel that was just staring at me when I was going on a photo walk. I may have shared this photo with you guys before, but we're going to edit it using the AI adaptive presets as well as some other things to see, just how well it works. I haven't tried this out yet, so I have no idea how it's going to work. But if you want to see the end result and, kind of see where I'm posting all of my work lately, go ahead and meet me over on Vero. Vero is a free social media app similar to Instagram, but I personally prefer it. So if you are on Vero, go ahead and send me a message at Free Will Photos, or you can just search me over there. But I would love to connect with you in that area. Now, if for whatever reason you're like, you know what, I want to get ON1 Photo Raw 2023, which I think it's a great program, and many people will do well with ON1 Photo Raw 2023. You can use the coupon code FreeWillPhotos20 and you'll save 20% when you check out. Now, this also works, or this works on anything that isn't subscription based. You get 20%. So if you want to get presets, if you want to get training material, if you want to buy a book, brushes, anything, right? That's not subscription based, you'll get 20%. Now, for the subscriptions to ON1 and things of that sort, there is a 5% discount that I've noticed that it does apply. All right. So you can save 5% by using Free Will Photos 20 on anything subscription based. So let's go ahead and jump into the computer. We'll come over here and I'll back up so I don't get decapitated in my own live stream. That would not be fun. So this is the edited version of this particular image. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with my voice. It'll be fine 1 second, and then 1 second I have to clear my throat. So, all right. I probably have shared this image before, but this is a photo of a squirrel. You've seen it on the thumbnail. And this is the edited version that I completed. So I actually like this version. I'm going to go ahead and save this as a snapshot. Snapshots are amazing. And I don't know why this isn't. There we go. Start typing, computer. Final look 1. That way I know that I have the original, because we're about to reset this and recreate a whole new image. All right. So I'm going to just hit reset all, and yep, I'm okay with resetting all of the settings. We're going to get a base image. All right. So this is what the photo looks like straight out of camera. I think it's still pretty good, but as you can see, I had a crop on it earlier, and that's what helped this out personally. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with the crop. And I think this time, instead of going with the 2x3, which is the dimensions of my R6, I think we're going to go with an 8x10 crop. I think that'll be a little bit better. Or not a little bit better. It'll just be different. So I'm going to go ahead and pull down on the crop here. And I don't want this little piece in the image. So I actually cropped that out in the last image. And this puts the squirrel like dead center. And maybe even pull it over so he's on that right third. Doesn't have to be perfect. Using the rule of thirds to your own preference, right? I think this might be fine. Give a little bit of context that he's in a tree, and that this branch is connected to this larger tree, trunk, whatever. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply, because I think that's a pretty good crop. All right. So now that we have our crop for the image, we're going to go ahead and open up our left pane here, go to AI Adaptive Presets, and then we're going to go to Bird and Wildlife category. And all I want to do is see which presets actually look good on the image. straight out of camera. So I'm going to click on or hover over pop it and see if it will pick up. It may be too much. So I'm just going to click on it, let it add it to the image, and then go over to effects. So let's do a before and after. It's not exactly what I wanted, so I'm just going to choose a different one. Let's try Healthy Glow. Okay, that's looking all right. I'm not entirely a fan of this, and this is where, just working with these AI adaptive presets, they really come in as a you got to mess around with them. Now, I do like this one, but you know what? We're going to nix the preset piece. So I'm just going to reset this because I don't want any of that on there. We're going to edit this ourselves. So I'm just going to go ahead and close out that particular pane. We'll hit develop, and we are going to go to town on this image. Now, if you've been watching any of my live streams, you know that I've said what I like to do recently is come to linear raw and then hit AI auto. Sometimes this yields really good results. So I just like to try it to see what happens. And that's the beauty of editing non-destructively, except for, is it not working right now? Let's hit manual, AI auto. Okay, so it is working. It's just not giving me a good result. However, when I pull up on the exposure, and this is also the reason why I like to work with linear raw. When you edit your photos and then you want to pull up on the exposure, what it does is it brightens things a little bit better. So I'm not getting anything blown out. Well, I guess up here, but those are already pure white bokehs anyway. I'm not worried about those as much because I'll dim those down later. But I'm talking about on the subject and in the main subject area. All right. But I can really open up, and with the linear raw preset or camera profile, at least, I can really open up the image. So I think this is actually a pretty good base model or base to work off of. And now let's go ahead and jump into the effects. Okay. Sorry, I have to continuously clear my throat. So now that we are inside of the effects module, we're going to go ahead and start with some color enhancing. This is, nothing new that I do. This is just the way that I like to edit my images. So we're going to go to yellow, and I think we want more, we're going to make this more of a fall color. So I'm going to make the yellows a little bit more orange and the greens a little bit more yellow. So that way they'll push more towards that orange. So we're going to make it look like the squirrel was in a tree in the fall, even though this photo was shot in the summer. It was shot on June 12th. So just food for thought there. And then we'll even pull. Nope, don't want to do that with the reds. So we'll leave that be. And we'll saturate the reds, or I'm sorry, I need to go back to yellows. We'll saturate those and then make the greens even more yellow, and we'll saturate those. I think that's a good fall look overall to the entire image. Now, I don't want any of this on the squirrel, so I'm going to grab my brush tool. I'm going to hit Shift and X to paint out, and then I'm just going to paint this away from the squirrel because I don't want this effect on the squirrel. And man, it's a really bad morning. So now I think that is good. All right, let's go ahead and look at a before and after. We're getting somewhere. All right, so we'll just call this yellow BG for a yellow background. All right, One of the benefits to working inside of ON1 Photo Raw is that you can rename your effects so that way you can keep up with what it is that you're doing. Now I'm going to add another filter, and I want to work on the squirrel this time. So I'm going to add another color enhancer. And before I start to do anything else, I'm just going to paint this effect over the squirrel, right? I just want to make my selection. So that way I'm telling ON1 exactly what I want it to do, where I want this effect to go, and how I want it to apply to our little friend here in the tree. Sound like Bob Ross a little bit, but that's okay. And don't forget his little claw-looking hands. These things look dangerous. So let me hit the letter O, and of course, wide. Let's invert that. And now, let's go back. I wasn't painting anything in because it was already showing up. So it is early in the morning. I am not firing on all cylinders apparently, so my bad. But it's okay, because you know what? That's what happens when you edit photos. Like sometimes you think you're doing something and you're not. Let me know in the comment section below if that has ever happened to you, where you spend all this time, you think you're painting something in, you notice that something isn't actually working or happening, and then you're like, you know what? I have no idea what's going on. Well, that's what happened to me just now, and it's okay. All right, that's just the way it goes when you edit photos. If I were perfect at this, then I would probably have a different day job, but I'm not perfect at this. And I think that's, oh, was I missing something down here? Yeah. And the reason why I'm making sure that I cover the majority of the squirrel is because I want to make sure that this effect is actually hitting the areas that I want it to hit. So what I want to do is I want to make the squirrel's colors a little bit more bright. This is going to help him stand out from the background. And the way that I do that is I'm going to click on the adjust brightness and then grab the eye picker tool here. And I'm just going to click on this inside layer that's kind of in the shadow. I'm going to pull that over to the right. And it's just opening up those colors a little bit. I'm going to grab it again, and I'm going to grab right around his eyes here. And that's still in that orangish brown color. So what I need to do, let's see if expanding the range helps. Maybe. Not a problem. So let's see. We'll come to this brown. Everything seems to be orange for this little fella. So instead of the color enhancer, I'm just going to copy this mask, and I'm going to go grab a tone enhancer. Once it opens up, we'll paste in our mask, and then what I'm going to do is open the shadows, and you can see he's starting to get a lot brighter. And I'm going to come down here. We'll add in some detail. Let me just bring that a little bit further. We'll add in some detail, so that way he kind of pops. We'll contrast him as well, and add in just a little bit of clarity. So now, and that is a little bit more than what I would want. So maybe even pull down on the opacity of the overall tone enhancer. And I like to turn these things off and on. Hopefully this is coming through on YouTube. It is a very subtle adjustment, but it really does help him stand out on the image, or in the image. But he's bright. Everything else needs to be a little bit darker. So We're going to call this I don't know if that's how you spell squirrel, but brighten. There you go. So we'll call that squirrel bright. And this color enhancer, we're not even going to use. So I'm just going to hit the X on that. And now we'll add another tone enhancer. In this one, we're going to pull down on the exposure. I'm going to darken this. And then what I like to do is even pull back on the details. All right. Now, you see me do this a lot in the local adjustments. It's the exact same thing that I typically do there. I'm going to hit the letter M. And I'm going to grab our masking bug. And we're going to go with edges. Or no, we want to protect the center. I always get that confused. Even though I've been using ON1 for years, I still get that confused. You want to click on center whenever you want to remove an effect from a certain area, because this is all about what do you want to protect. And that's really what the word shape should say. It should say protect this. And I want to protect the center of this mask. So anything in the center of this particular masking tool, I want that to not have the effect. That's essentially what that means. And we'll even bring our feather in a little bit more. So now the squirrel is really starting to pop from this background. And I love to just remove some of the detail from everywhere else because that gives like that lens fall off. Now, we'll call this BG dark. And we'll add another filter. And this one will be that lens filter. Now, you could do a few different lens blur, not lens filter, sorry. You could do a few different things here, all right? You can, and we'll hit the letter M again to get our masking bug, and I'll click on reflected gradient and click right above or right on his face here, and then kind of fade this off. I like a larger fade when I use the lens blur tool. I think that's more natural and realistic. Like, to me, that looks like a natural photo, right? Especially when you're using f8 as the aperture and you want to get a little bit more of that bokeh background type thing. Using the reflected gradient is a really cool trick that you can use, because the focus plane, here, let me jump over here real quick. So the way that the focus plane works is in a linear fashion. Even though the lens is round, as it cycles through the depth of the photo, deciding what to focus on, and based off of the aperture, the focus plane is actually a straight line, which is why when you take photos of groups, you want to get them as much on the same plane, and you want to stop down your aperture so that way it gets a further depth. Because if you have a back row, then you want to make sure that you have a depth that's wide enough to get to that back row. And that's all relative to how close you stand. If you got questions about that, drop it in the comment section. That's beside the point for today's conversation. I just wanted to share that. Hey, Kelvin, what is up? And Lake Sebago Lake, Maine. Nice. Welcome to the stream. And I appreciate you dropping that link there, or that comment. Thank you. But hopefully, that made sense, what I was talking about with the focal plane. This is why the reflected gradient works so well with the lens blur tool. And that's all subjective, my opinion, 100%. But still, I think it's valid, right? Okay, so the amount here I think works well. We'll turn it off, and turn it back on, and you see that it just kind of puts everything out of focus. The background was already out of focus, which is why I think this works so well too, because it just starts to fade the look across the image a little bit better. So we can actually leave this at the default settings. Maybe I'll do a tutorial specifically on the lens blur filter, but today we're not going to do that because I don't know if that's beneficial. So now we're left with this look. Now this is where I would normally do a snapshot. And if you're not using snapshots, I really recommend that you do. And we'll call this look to base. And this is where you can really get creative, right? Because now that I have my tone set the way that I want it to be, I have my background, I have my focus, I have my clarity, and I even have my stylistic look for the background looking more fall-like. We can do a few different things. So I'm going to hit add filter, and the very first thing that you could do is add a LUT. Now, obviously, this LUT doesn't look very good. I wouldn't use the color pop LUTs here. You can maybe go with something like a vintage matte and just kind of cycle through each of these LUTs, and you can get a different look, right? Again, I haven't tested this out, so I'm really just exploring. And this is the fun of photo editing, all right? You take a photo, you get it back into the digital darkroom, and you just kind of have fun. Like once you get your base, you can just have fun. So like in the color grading, and these are all built in, they ship with ON1. So if you have ON1, you have all of these presets that I'm going through. So classic, I mean, that looks just like what we already have. And then comfort looks like what we already have, more contrasty. And then we have a few other ones in here. This one looks kind of cool. Iced. I don't know if it fits for what I'm trying to go for, which in my opinion, I'm just looking for something that's a little warm and colorful. So for that, I'll probably have to come into these golden hour LUTs. And these are LUTs that I believe I got from the creative pack. So this one here, I actually really enjoy for the background. So what I'm going to do is hit golden hour 3. And then I need to, let me see if I paste the mask and then invert that. And I'll probably have to use a different type of filter to mask in this particular effect over the squirrel. Now it is a little too strong, but again, going for that fall look in the background, I don't want it so much on the squirrel. So maybe we'll pull down the opacity there, and we will hit Shift X so I can paint it away. And I'm just going to manually paint this away from the squirrel because I don't think that I want it on. And the challenge here is his tail. Maybe I'll just let that be because the background shines through more there. And that's okay. And then I'll probably take it off of his shoulder side. I don't know. I'm not a vet. I'm not even an animal dude like that. I like dogs, but that's about it. And the squirrel was just looking at me. All right. So I think that actually works well. And let me go ahead and turn this off and on. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. It's realistic, but creative at the same time. All right. So that's one thing that we can do there. What I forgot to add, which I should have added to the look base, is a little bit of brightening to the eyes and the face here. Now, I typically do this type of edit inside of the local adjustment. It's just a personal preference. You can do it with a tone enhancer in the effects module if you so choose. But I'm going to just go ahead and open up the shadows, and we have some exposure there. Grab my brush tool, Shift X, and we're just going to go ahead and paint this in. Now, I always heavy hand my paint jobs initially, and I am not moving this slow. The brush is just moving that slow. That's just the way it goes sometimes. But I always heavy hand my paint jobs just so I can see what I'm painting in. All right. Because you can modify it later, right? I can just pull down on the opacity about 50%, and that makes more sense, right? Just a little bit more. And then I like to turn it off, turn it back on. And I see that, it definitely helped out there. Now, what I need on the rest of the body that I'm noticing now that the face is so bright is a little bit of a paint job on the rest of the body. So I'm going to bring this down to about 37%. And I'm just going to do one quick stroke across the rest of his body. Maybe another one. And that just helps with, again, brightening him up, making sure that he's good to go. And if I turn this off and on, you'll see his whole body's brightened up. And I may even have to pull down the opacity just a little bit more because his face was really bright. And I don't need it that bright. Okay. So QUIR, and we'll call this face and body. Bam. All right. So now we can go ahead and save this as a snapshot, and we'll call this look 3 fall. All right. So now we can get rid of this LUT. It's going to bring us back to where we were. We'll come back to add. This time I want to go with a sunshine filter. And I like the sunshine filter on these types of images. But what I really want to do is change, or not change, just warm up the entire photo. All right. I think that this one will do well with a warmer look. And then I'll even pull up on the glow just to see. Yeah. So this gives like that bright and airy type of look. Now, it's too much of a look on the squirrel. So I'm going to hit the B key with a low opacity, probably around 60. I'm just going to go ahead and paint this away. So Shift X to get my paint out brush. I'm just going to paint this away from the squirrel. All right. And the reason for that is I don't want the squirrel to have that much of the effect on him. All right. Now, what else could we do here? Well, we could do a vignette, but I'm not going to do that. And I had a different idea in mind, and I forgot it like that quick because it's early in the morning. Curves adjustment. And what I like to do is fade the look and then throw in a little bit of contrast. Like you start to see common threads in my editing style, and hopefully you have your own editing style where you do common things, right? And this is just helping me get different looks pretty quickly. And so now that I have that, maybe we'll go into the blues and we will add across the entire image, maybe a little bit of yellow, or let's see. And then we can probably bring up the blues and the shadows to cool those off, and maybe even the highlights. So we're only putting yellows in the midtones. And that's an awkward looking curve, if you can see that. It looks like a bird a little bit, but just an idea. I like the way that came out. And then maybe even in the reds, where these highlight areas are. Let's see if we can push a little bit of reds into those. And then we'll pull down on the shadows just a touch. But I'm not liking that. And this is the downside to using the curves adjustment tool here. You can't delete nodes. So I had to hit Command Z twice just to get back to there. But I do like this. So turning it off, turning it on. It's subtle, but that's just the way that I like to edit. I really do appreciate that. So we'll go ahead and add this as a snapshot. We had look 3, so we'll go look 4, and we'll call this bright and fade it. There. Okay. So now we can get rid of this one, and we'll do one more before the stream is over. And we'll hit add filter. This time, you know what? Let's go black and white, because why not? Now, there's a few different options to go black and white, right? You could just drop a black and white filter on top of whatever your base adjustments are and, kind of tweak it from there. But the way that I like to make my black and whites is actually by adding a bleach bypass just before the black and white filter. Okay. Now, the reason why I put it before is typically because I don't do this much work in the effects module. And what I want to do is contrast everything before the black and white filter hits it. All right. So we're going to just go ahead and hit on bleach bypass. And, playing with the amount, every photo is going to require a different amount. So if you want, and this is just a quick tip when it comes to making black and whites, if you want a more faded, softer look in your black and white, reduce the amount of the bleach bypass. This is still going to add contrast, and that's essentially what bleach bypass does. It makes the brightest areas brighter and the darkest areas darker. So you're separating your contrast across your image, which is good. But sometimes maybe you just don't want that much. All right. So pull down the amount before you go into the black and white. And if you want a whole bunch of that contrast, then just pull it all the way up. All right. So again, experiment with that. Make it work for you. Now, the next thing that I like to do in my bleach bypass, or at least what I'm going to do with this image, is mess around with the detail. And that's not because I want this to be like some super crunchy detailed image. In fact, I don't want it to be super crunchy or detailed at all. However, in black and white photos, what I have found, and I learned this from Serge Romali, I think that's how you say his name, Photo Serge on YouTube, is that there are a style of black and whites where there's something in focus, but something out of focus. And so what I like to do is crank up the detail here, so that way I can see what's going to be in focus. And then I mask this in or out, depending on how I want to work. You'll see, and I just explained that probably poorly, but hopefully my demonstration will be a little bit better. And then just want to check on the contrast, and this is how you start to get those darker looking areas, and then maybe even brighten it up. So honestly, this by itself would probably be an okay look. But what I'm going to do is hit the mask icon, and then I'm going to invert this. All right. So now I'm not showing anything on my image. Excuse me. I have the brush already selected, and I'm going to hit Shift X to get my paint in. And then what I'm going to do, and mind you, I'm also on 60% opacity, because this should be a subtle effect, in my opinion, or at least my style. So what I'm going to do, I definitely want his face to be sharp and in focus, and this is going to get that detail. All right. And I'm going to go over his face one more time because I really want that effect to come through on his face. But over his body, I'm going to be less aggressive. And then I like this tree here. And, not that I want to draw attention to it, but I think that it can use some of that detail. Now, this is not one of those types of photos where there's a ton of things that could be in focus and out of focus, or more detailed and less detailed. This is one of those focus where the main attention is obviously on the squirrel, and then there's a bunch of negative space. Almost a minimalist photo, but because these branches and this trunk is here, not so much of a minimalist photo. So I don't know if that made sense or not. But the goal here, if I turn this off and on, you'll see that there's just a pop. When I turn it back on, there's just a pop of detail and contrast that comes over the squirrel. And that's what I was going for in this particular edit. Now, you could do a ton of different things, all right? And what I'm going to do with this is the background. Because I know that those are primarily yellows, right? Because we made them yellows. I just turned it off so that way we can see it. Well, in the color response here, we can just pull down on the yellows. So now I'm making that background darker. And I know that there's some greens in there, so we'll even pull that down. And we're starting to get that deeper contrast into the image. Now, what you have to be careful of is if your subject has the yellow look or yellow colors in it, but for whatever reason, the background also has yellow, you're going to have to duplicate your black and white filter. So I'll just demonstrate that. I'll add a second black and white filter. So this one will be base, and that one should go above, or below, I should say. That one should go below your one with all of the edits to the background. And then what we're going to do is use the masking option. And I don't know why. What just happened? Okay, well, we'll do it anyway. Let's go ahead and grab our brush tool, and we will paint out in this area because that's where our squirrel is. And we'll go one more time because I'm on a lower opacity, and we just want to make sure that we get that squirrel out and about, and then maybe just invert this one because I'm not sure why the background isn't changing. Maybe this one does need to be underneath. Okay, so now we got the background. Got it. So you got to put the background layer underneath BG color. You got to put the background layer underneath the base layer. So that way, when you turn it off, you see how it's cutting out the squirrel here. So that way, when I turn it on, the squirrel gets its black and white adjustment again. Sorry, that was that's just sometimes how you got to play with it, right? But overall, this is the final look that I think I'll go with. So what I'll do is hit Snapshot, and we'll call this look 5 BNW. Bam. So now I have a total of really 1, 2, 3, 4 looks, and then the final base look, that's final look 1. But just really quickly, I was able to go through multiple looks for one image, and we'll go ahead and take a look at all of those. So this one here is the final look. Once the computer decides to display it, it's coming. There it is. All right. So, in fact, that is the first time, or this is the photo that we originally started with. And now we should get to look 2 base, which is the look that I created during this stream, which is right here. And this is the base look. All right. Then we went into more of that fall look, which I think is really cool. This look right here, I think this is really cool. I'm going to post this one on Vero here in a little while, or maybe later today. Then we have look number 4, which is a bright and faded look. And this is what I love about snapshots, that I can just go through all of these edits. These are all very different edits, but I have the access to them at a single click. And then we have our black and white look. Now, what I would like ON1 to do, because I'm going to go ahead and export this fall look, what I would like ON1 to do, once it pulls up, when you go to export your images, what I would like to see is a token added, maybe somewhere in, like, maybe make a edit module token where you can choose your snapshots, or even just make a token by itself, a category by itself that says snapshots. That way I can create multiple snapshots, or that could be a generated, because that's in the file name. Maybe they can add a token in the generated subfolders down here that says snapshots. Now, if you're not familiar with the export module inside of ON1, that's perfectly fine. Just know that there's a lot of really cool things that you can do when it comes to exporting your images. But for this sake, I'm just going to export this one. And no, I don't want to save the changes, because that's my Vero export. Anytime I want to export an image for Vero, that's what I use to do so. That way I just have to click it once and it's done. But hopefully that made sense. Let me go ahead and jump over here. So I want to say thank you to everyone who came and supported the stream. If you want to connect with me over on Vero, please do so at Free Will Photos, and I would love to connect with you and just see what type of work that you are producing. I'm very active on Vero. I do post regularly, usually once a day, sometimes multiple times, but very rarely multiple times. Now, if you want to pick up ON1 Photo Raw and save 20% on the standalone version, you can do so by using Free Will Photos 20 at checkout. All right. That's Free Will Photos 20. It's going to save you 20% on anything on the ON1 website that doesn't require a subscription. Now, if you want to get a subscription model to ON1 Photo Raw, then you can use this coupon code, and it should save you about 5% on that purchase. So if you want to save a little bit of money and help the channel out in the process, then please consider using the Free Will Photos 20. And until next time, I want you guys to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.